Well, and with that, Seth, it has been a slow start to cotton production this year. Is this something that producers should be worried about?
Yeah, to a certain extent. So we all know that cotton's sort of a delicate crop early on. It likes to kind of be, stress-free to get off to a good start. And we've had multiple things that have compounded our slow start. So obviously the rain that's been statewide this year has kept a lot of folks out of the fields when maybe they'd normally like to get in there and plant. In other situations, we've had cotton that's gotten in the ground, but has gotten a really slow start because of the conditions. When we look at our heat units, which is what we usually focus on for cotton, progress and where we should be, surprisingly, we're not that far off from our 10-year average. We're only about 3 to 4 days off, so about 50 heat units off. But compared to last year, and we all have kind of that short-term memory where we're going to compare it to our last year, we're about 250, 260 heat units off from what we saw in 2018, and it depends on where you are in the state too. So that's, where we were last year this time was much further ahead, but we also were much drier then. So if we do start to get a few more sunny, warmer days, we've got the moisture down deep to drive this crop. We just need to get the conditions that are going to help, promote that vigorous growth.
Are we seeing situations between dryland and irrigated cotton potential this year?
So one thing about the rain, it's kind of evened everything out.
Right.
With irrigated cotton in certain places where you have, the ability to turn a pivot on and help it, get out of the ground, we've seen light shots of water go out to sort of break crust up from hard packing rains. But we haven't seen those rescue shots that we've needed to get, just the moisture in the seed bed. So we hope that we can get a pretty, good start across the board, whether we're dryland and irrigated from a moisture standpoint. Again, it kind of goes back to some of our other conditions. And on the downside of being dryland, if you do get those packing rains, those crusting rains, you don't really have a quick way to get rid of it. You've got to go out there with some light tillage and sort of scratch or hoe the surface and try to break that crust up to promote, those seedlings from emerging.
We know that there are deadlines on planting dates coming up, and some have passed already. Are there? When is it too late overall to get the seed in the ground? Because it has been a not so typical year, I guess.
Yeah, so June 10th for most of Oklahoma is our irrigated deadline. So that's for full coverage. Mm-hmm. June 20th is for, again, most of the state, not all of it, right, is dry land. As far as your last realistic date, it's really, if you could tell what it was going to do in August and September, we'd have a much better idea, right? That's the easiest thing to say. For northern Oklahoma, a lot of that's going to be dry land outside of the panhandle. And even in the panhandle, I would certainly hesitate to put cotton in the ground, much after the first week of June. You're going to certainly into the short season. Now, there are varieties out there. There are things we can do to manage it for earliness. So there are things we can do to mitigate some of this. And a lot of it comes down to fertility. It comes down to variety selection. And comes down to just overall, management of pests, making sure there's no weeds and thrips and pest feeding. So there's things we can do to mitigate it, but I think realistically, there's a reason we have these final plant deadlines, these insurance deadlines, and going past those in a lot of areas is going to put us in a bind. And maybe another crop that might be a better option in those cases.
And you mentioned some of those pest pressures there. Let's talk about the potential for weed pressure and then insects. Are we going to see that with planting dates adjusted this year?
Yeah, so we've already seen some thrips pressure hit us. Now, what we typically think of with thrips, and that's a small vegetative feeding pest, and they like to feed on the new growth, the tender growth, and they really prefer smaller plants. Usually the later you plant, the lower that potential goes, but we've seen thrips pressure already pretty high in areas, and we know folks are making oversprays once it comes out of the ground. Weeds, if you think about the moisture situation, if cotton's got good moisture, it means weeds probably have excellent moisture. So we are certainly seeing a lot of pressure on our herbicides. And so if we're in a replant situation, or if we're trying to get a struggling crop to survive, we really need to be on time with our pesticide applications, whether that's for an insect or weeds, to sort of eliminate as much competition as we can and promote again those vigorous growing conditions.
So all of that with a little bit of a break in rain and warmer temperatures.
That would all help.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much, Seth. We'll check in with you later. Seth Byrd, cotton specialist here at Oklahoma State University.